Okay, so we got to tell everybody go to mute.
Yep. Hello, everyone. This is Deacon Joseph Sway, having some technical difficulties.
This is Hiro Heenek.
Okay, give us a second. For those of us who haven't found us yet,
can we close the other one down?
Have to, yeah, like everywhere. So give me just a moment.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay, now I'm gonna have to close that. I have to delete that. All right.
I got to delete the one in the Western Orthodox group too.
Yeah, well, I was just going to change the links.
Oh, okay. Well, can you do that? Because if you click on the program, that little, if you click on the image, it still takes you back to the old one sometimes.
Well, what I'm doing is, hold on, I'm going to edit the post. Then I have to X out the old one, put in the new one, save. Okay, sorry you guys for anyone listening to us working on things. We're true Orthodox. So, the true Orthodox are Eastern Orthodox. If what you're asking is, there's no such thing that understand the question. All true Orthodox are Eastern Orthodox. If you're asking, are we, as they like to say, the question is who is canonical? Because right now Russia and Constantinople are in a war as to who is canonical. They'll bow down to Constantinople because the truth is the ecumenical program is going as it is. But of what's on paper outside of ecumenism, and Sergianism and monism, theory should be no difference between our beliefs. Unfortunately, to modernism, that's why we have.
Father Joseph, your microphone is cutting in and out.
Okay. I'm not sure why. Let me see here. Hold on. I'll try to see if I can fix the microphone.
You're gonna try to plug it in and plug it back?
Yeah. So, I can try. Hold on. Hello?
Yeah, I hear you now.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what I was saying was this, is that, in modernism, once it affects the seminary, so on and so forth, you start getting into, higher biblical criticism. You start going into the whole, whether Christ was really resurrected or not. Unfortunately, that has infected a lot of what we call the official Orthodox seminaries and stuff like that. We've talked about this on previous shows. It's all this stuff is basically designed to erode the ability of people to defend and believe in the church. And so,
can you send me the new link to the video because I can't find it?
Yeah, hold on. Give me 1 second. Yeah, we from our perspective, being canonical of the canon. And so
okay, you're still going in and out. I'm sorry to bring this up.
How about now?
Yeah, you just went out for 3 seconds. You came back in.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Next to my face. In any case, yes, we are. The whole point is that canonicity is determined by following the canons, by doing what the canons require. So in the early, probably the late, I'd say probably the middle of the 20th century, that was when SCOBA was first formed. And originally it was called Standing Conference of Orthodox Bishops in America. Then somewhere in the 70s and 80s, because of the rise of old calendarists, because in prominence.
You're going in and out again, Father Joseph.
Okay.
I'm having difficulty understanding what you're saying. That's why I'm saying that.
Okay, give me a second. Okay. I'm gonna see if can you hear anything now?
I can hear you. It's not. It's what's happening is it's not you backing away from the microphone. It's you're talking normal voice sound, then suddenly it cuts out for 2 seconds, then it comes back in with normal, then cuts out. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, give me a second because what I'm gonna do is I'm switching into the internal microphone. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, well now I'm using the internal microphone, so that's fine. Basically, what I was saying was, and hopefully I don't break up this time, but what I am saying is that because the official churches began using the term canonical in the 1970s to distinguish themselves from bodies like the Old Calendarists and Rocor, even though the Patriarch of Jerusalem was still recognizing them. What happened was canonical became a buzzword, and it's still being used that way. So the idea that, you're canonical if you're in communion with Constantinople. That isn't the definition of canonicity ever. As a matter of fact, I would say throughout the church's history, sometimes being canonical meant you were a heretic, like during the controversy, for example. So the point is, it's important to remember that words like
when they say canonical, they mean official.
yeah, but that's my point. Officiality does not make canonicity. The two things aren't the same. And the question of who makes them official, and so that's my whole point, is that if we're doing things according to the canons, the question of officiality shouldn't come up.
All right. So what's the theme of today's program, Father Joseph?
No, there was no real theme. I mean, we just came up with this a minute or two ago.
Oh yeah.
But the point was that basically we still haven't gotten any response whatsoever from the Diamond Brothers. Shock. One of the things that I was thinking about, I was going to write this in the Monday's description as I go for weirder and weirder descriptions. Thimer Mildred asks, do you recognize any of the World Orthodox Church's fathers? We recognize our bishops. The problem is we're not bishops. We're diptychs. We don't keep diptychs. The point is, we have true Orthodox churches in Russia, true Orthodox churches in Greece, true Orthodox churches in Bulgaria, true Orthodox churches in Europe. So the point is, we are in communion with them, and so we can't be in communion with both. And they would feel the exact same way about us. This wasn't the case, when Jerusalem was, when Diodorus was in charge, Patriarch Diodorus was in charge of Jerusalem, because there was still confusion there. But in the sense that I see the fighting from within very positive, but it's going to be a long, long slug. So that's what I'm telling you. I'm not going to sit here and say, come join us. I'd love to do that. But if the person's like, no, I just want to...
Father Joseph, try to back over to the regular mic. Actually, I think
am I breaking up again?
You're breaking up again.
Wow.
I don't know what is going on.
My guess is it's Friday and everyone's using the internet.
Yeah, now I lost. Okay.
All right, I'm switching back to the other mic. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I'd much rather have this mic because I can hear you much better. It's much crisper. Okay.
The question of recognition, do they recognize us? And because we get called everything from uncanonical to vagantes. So the problem is, the key is not recognition of each other. Recognition of each other, as shown after the Seventh Ecumenical Council in the 100 years later, works itself out eventually. But you have to maintain the Orthodox faith. And that means there's no modernism, no ecumenism, no Sergianism. Did everyone hear that part? Because that's really important.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the key. And that's gonna, Sergianism may die out on its own, although it seems to be taking a different form with this whole craven submission to Putin. But there's not. But then the flip side is, then you look at what's happening in Ukraine, and they've got craven submission to the New World Order. So
they have KP Sergianism of its own sort. If you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The guy Filaret Denisenko was himself a heavy Sergianist.
Yeah, and someone was mentioning on the forum, the War Room, the War Zone, that the Dimonds embrace some sort of new type of end times eschatology, where there is no personal Antichrist, but that John Paul II supposedly was the Antichrist or something like that.
Oh, brother.
And Alexei was mentioning this, and he had mentioned it, I think, in the comments last night, and that's why I was trying to get more information about this. But I'm thinking, would it really matter if we produced the dozens of the unanimity of the church fathers on this issue, or would they say something like, well, the church father, what they give the exact same reply that they gave when we brought up all the church fathers on baptism of blood and desire, which is to say the church fathers didn't say that.
My guess is that that's the direction that they'd go in, because here's the thing: at one point they cited St. John Chrysostom, and St. John Chrysostom very clearly talks about baptism of blood in a different passage.
And he talks about baptism of desire in another passage.
Yeah, so they're deliberately misrepresenting these fathers. Mm-hmm. So when confronted with that, I don't know what they do. And to be quite honest, I don't think they do much at all. I think they try to switch to another father.
It's coming to the point where the Diamond Brothers, their view, they've decided that these two unordained Roman Catholics, sedevacantists, I don't know who supposedly made them Dominicans or Benedictines or whatever, that they are the determiner of everything true, these two men. And when you say that, well, isn't it your interpretation? They say, no, that's the church's interpretation.
Well, I don't want to.
The church happens to be interpreted only by them. That's how they view it, And that was what, who was it? Basil said last night, that when they say the fathers teach this, they really mean the Diamond brothers teach that.
Yeah.
Which is a cultic behavior.
No, I agree. And I think that one of the key ways of identifying cultic behavior when you're dealing with them is the fact that they have to redefine terms. Nobody, what was I going to say? For example, nobody doubts that baptism normatively done is done with water. And I noticed that with what's-his-face saying water baptism, I decided I'm in website, and they use that phrase constantly, water baptism, as though everyone else is doing some other kind of baptism.
Yeah, I've only heard water baptism. The first time I ever heard that being used was by Protestants in debate with people who refute about the whole issue about baptismal regeneration.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's not specifically a Protestant originated term.
Well, I don't want to get
anyway,
but the Diamond Brothers definitely use it as a meme, and they're attempting to get people to think of baptism as something different from quote unquote water baptism. And so that's it's a very dangerous thing. And it's how people get locked into cultic mentalities. Okay, so Ramble777 said, you should debate a Protestant YouTuber like RC Apologist. The Catholics don't seem to want to debate at all. I don't know who RC Apologist is, but we can look him up. We can always ask him. Let me let's see. Hold on. R.C.apologist. I assume that's a reference to RC Sproul. Hold on. RC Apologist. YouTube. Okay, Reformed Christian Apologist channel. Alrighty. Let's see. He's live now. Okay. Let's see. Well, what I can do is this. Since he's live now, well, I don't want to go there and just be like, hey, do you want to come on our show? Because I think that would be weird.
Well, we're only doing a 30-minute program. We've been going for about 10. So we only have a few more minutes. We only had about, we've been going for about 11 minutes. So we have about, 19 minutes left, So we're not going that long here. So.
Yeah, well, you're right, Rambles. I personally think that that's a good attack. Somebody contacted me who was watching. It was an informal debate and more of a spat between the two of them. Well, I don't believe in making a spat, and I think I can maintain decorum when we're talking. I don't see it, because when you create a spat, what happens is emotions run high, and that's when people slip. One of the things that is like, besides, first off, I mean, the three main rules of, apologetics I try to stick to. The first one is always make the sign of the cross, because God is first. The second one is calm down. And if the person that you're talking to is not calm, they need to calm down. And that means you need to kind of talk to them. And the third thing is the fathers come first. And once you've got those three rules down, it's going to be a lot easier to debate with people. If it becomes a nasty spat, nobody wins. Not only do both people look bad, what ends up happening is both sides end up trying to dig their heels in the ground. And so,
or try to catch the other in performative
Yeah, well, I mean, for some people, that's their apologetic technique, that they try to get people riled up and then they try to catch them. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely, I'd reach out to this RC apologist guy. I mean, I don't know if I'd do it right now.
Well, you can. I think you can send messages or leave comments on videos, and we can just do that in the future and say, hey, do you want to have a debate? With the easiest.
Let me see here. Hold on. Okay, so this guy. Oh, he uses Bible software. That's very nice. Okay. Well, since he answers questions, hello. I'll just say hello. Someone asked if you'd be interested in discussing orthodoxy with us. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. I don't know how I'm going to hear. If anyone's listening to him right now, like if they have him on channel, if I turn it on, it's going to be literally two things at once.
Any other issues that we should review from yesterday or the day before that, Father Joseph?
Not sure. I don't think so. Were there any that you wanted to talk about?
Well, the Antichrist issue was actually kind of I was hoping to get more information. It seems that I'm trying to find a cheap copy of this book by Leontius of Jerusalem called The Testimonies of the Saints, where he defends Chalcedon. And I noticed that the Monophysite anti-Chalcedonian interlocutors did not provide any substantive reply to Leontius's substantial criticism of the Monophysite position. That Leontius went through each of the issues and showed why their conclusions were wrong. All right, that Dioscorus was justly deposed, that he also had a heretical, that when he was charged with numerous things to begin with, Dioscorus. And I think it just so happened they deposed him for murdering St. Flavian. That was the big thing, But he was also under liability charges for heresy, the issue with Eutyches, and all this other stuff. Because it seems the Monophysites seem to continuously forget the Latrocinium. I'm not sure why that is forgotten. And you remember the famous phrase that the legates of the Roman Church said there, contradicitor, to all the acts of the...
and then they almost got killed.
Yeah, they basically, because they stood up, even though they were surrounded by all these angry people, to defend St. Flavian and the Orthodox canons and the position. And why did Dioscorus refuse? Well, I think, now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Chalcedon had about 610 or 600 bishops. I think it had the largest number of bishops of any ecumenical council. Nicaea had, 312, 318. Constantinople had about 200. I think Ephesus had a similar number. I think Chalcedon was the largest of the ecumenical councils. I might be mistaken, but I think it had the largest number of bishops. And the reason Dioscorus wasn't in Egypt, he came to Asia Minor. He stayed in a nearby town outside of Chalcedon. Now, I know this because I had to look at the Acts of the Council of Chalcedon when I was arranging trial procedure documents and things like that.
Yeah, I remember.
And it's pretty. They followed everything to the letter. Where they were given him, I think they gave him 2 summons, 40 days apart. They sent 2 bishops each time. He was like, "I'm sick" or "I'm busy" or something like that. And why did Dioscorus not show up at Chalcedon? Well, he did not show up because there was no way he was going to be found innocent, because he was guilty of murdering St. Flavian, or contributing to it. He let it happen. He endorsed it. And he did receive Eutyches. He may have later repudiated Eutyches, but he did initially receive him. So they tried him in absentia, but they gave him multiple warnings and 30 days apart.
They almost went chasing him down, looking for,
Yeah, and notice that the imperial government did not force him to come. The government could have simply sent the magistrates and arrested him and brought him to the council, but they chose not to do that. And the Egyptian bishops at the council acquiesced and accepted the deposition of Dioscorus. Now, they said that they could only, according to Egyptian custom, elect a new patriarch upon returning to Egypt. However, upon their return, Dioscorus also shows up, and Dioscorus immediately activates, for lack of a better word, his underworld mafia type connections. All right. He begins. It's said that Dioscorus ruled Egypt at one time, almost like he was the pharaoh. That was how politically powerful he was. So the other Egyptian bishops are terrorized.
Yeah, I hold on. It's funny. Timur Mildred said Father's James is on RC's stream. Well, I was actually I kind of took that stream and put it on my tablet so I could hear if he answers the question about coming on our show. And yes, Mr. Water Baptism is there, asking about the Shroud of Turin.
Anyway, but I think it's important to realize that the actual defenses the Orthodox made of Chalcedon have never been substantially engaged in by the Monophysites to this
They
day.
use the excuse that they basically, because of the whole Turkish yoke, that they didn't have any. They didn't have the theological education necessary until the 20th century, which
Well,
amazingly shows up.
the Turkish yoke came in the 14th
Well, no,
century.
I'm saying that they were under Muslim domination the whole time since.
Okay.
So the whole point is, magically, during the rise of ecumenism, they became educated enough to realize that they can shove the Henoticon at us again.
Yeah, exactly, and that's in fact the Monophysite position when all this ecumenical love talk. It's the Akakian Henoticon position. It's the position of the Emperor Zeno and the Henoticon. And we know what happened last time. They forced the Henoticon. They pretended as if everything was all right, and then they began to take over positions and then attack Chalcedon. All right, so this has been done before. Okay, so that was something I wanted to go over, Leontius.
One thing that I was actually gonna, just as a preview of the next weird intro that I'm putting in on Monday, I actually was going to make a joke about starting a band called the Clergy Hats. And this sounds weird, but I'm going to say why I'm doing this. The reason why is because too often apologetics is assumed to be the domain of the clergy. And it's not. It is the domain of everyone who wants to defend the faith. And so
you put together a band.
Huh?
You're putting together a musical band.
It's more of a joke.
Oh, okay. It's not a real band. Okay, I see.
Do you play an instrument, Father?
No. Years ago, I used to play trombone and a few other things in piano.
Oh, it's a ska band we're starting. Okay, well that's great.
Nah.
Anyway, so yeah, there's so that's the whole point is that I don't have a hat, and I'm grateful because I hate hats. But the whole point is clergy are known for their hats.
Okay.
And wait, hold on. The guy is talking about us now.
And so we still got no reply from the Diamond Brothers, email wise. Okay.
Hold on.
All right.
I want to hear what this guy's saying about me or about us.
Okay. Well.
Okay. No. Okay. He passed it already. I think he's talking about something else. Anyway, look. If there are people listening to that, if they accept the our challenge, that's fine. We'd be glad to have them on. But in any case, I thought that he was talking about it now. But past that, it's tricky. We got somebody who's who listens to the program and is on the war zone. Got invited by a Baptist to do a debate with him. They asked if I could go and ask him. I did, and they got no response since. So I'd like to have more debates with other people. So I'm just curious as to why people don't take it back. But I've noticed that the biggest voices that like to go say that no one will challenge us, they don't say anything.
Mm-hmm. Theomar Mildred says, can we talk about the heresy of Nestorianism? Yeah, sure. Nestorianism was a heresy invented in reality by Theodore of Mount Suestia, who was a bishop in the Antiochian Patriarchate, and he died, I think, around 427, 428. But Theodore, not Theodore of Cyrus, but Theodore of Mount Suestia, had several disciples. The most prominent of those disciples was a man named Nestorius. Nestorius was a well-known preacher. He was well favored by, I think, the emperor and the empress at the time. And so they supported him to be made Patriarch of Constantinople. So he was taken to Constantinople and he was consecrated bishop. And initially everything seemed to go all right. Everybody liked him. But what happened is one of his chaplains began to preach that Our Lady was not truly Theotokos. Was not truly Mother of God and the birth giver of God, but should rather be called Christotokos, or birth giver of Christ, or Mother of Christ. And then Nestorius began to teach this. And this spelled out what Nestorius's views were, which is that the incarnation, in effect, was kind of a moral union, or some sort of loose spiritual union between an independent divine nature in person and another independent divine, human nature in person, which which formed kind of a prosopon, they would say, which came together to form kind of this prosopon or acting figure of who we would call Christ. They do not. One of the things the Nestorians denied was what was called the communicatio idiomatum. That is, you could say things like it was God who shed his blood on the cross, just like we could say the Son of Man is in heaven, because the attributes of each nature can be communicated to the other without it changing the other nature in a fundamental sense, if I'm recalling that correctly. So Nestorius denied that. So he denied that. I think he did admit that the Virgin could be called Theotokos in some sort of overly poetic sense. So what happened is the monasteries around Constantinople began to debate with him, and when it became evident that he would not back down, the monasteries immediately ceased commemoration and communion with Nestorius. All the abbots of the monasteries in Constantinople did this. Yeah, Rebel says that's exactly what most Protestants believe. Yeah, tell me about it. Unfortunately, it is. That's why they will not say Mother of God. They will not say Birth Giver of God. They'll say all that. Anyway, so what happened is then St. Cyril Alexander began to write letters, and that all led eventually to the Council of Chalcedon. And not Council of Chalcedon, Council of Ephesus, I'm sorry. And Nestorius was deposed and expelled. And there was a lot of resistance in Antioch to this, but by year 433, the Patriarch John of Antioch had reconciled with St. Cyril, because what had happened was that once people who even were initially supporters of Nestorius, because a lot of them, were under the impression that Nestorius' opponents were like Apollinarians or something like that. But once it was learned that Nestorius refused to say Mother of God and Birth Giver of God, the Antiochians withdrew from it. And Nestorius, I think, actually lived to like 455, and supposedly he claimed the Council of Chalcedon vindicated him, and the Monophysites make no end of that, as if somehow, I don't know, whatever we're supposed to take the word of Nestorius, But nevertheless, he died. Nestorianism
survived them among the Assyrian church.
What happened? There's the churches in Persia and Persia, in parts of India, modern-day Pakistan, some parts of Afghanistan, and parts of Iraq. Nestorianism became still an active force there because of, I think, the school of Edessa. And there's a lot of debate about when exactly, because there's some evidence that at one point you would have an Assyrian patriarch that would be Orthodox. Then he would die, and then there would be a fight, and then the Persian emperor would appoint a Nestorian patriarch, all right, and then a Monophysite one. But eventually, it seems the Nestorians took over what we would call the Church of the East sometime in the 600s or the early 700s. They completely took it over. Now, we can always point out the Nestorian councils, but you got to remember, when you're having large groups of dioceses, that you can have them align at different points. Anyway, so Nestorianism continued. It eventually expanded to include large portions of Western China, the Central Asia, but it was destroyed by the Mongols. However, the spirit of Nestorianism was continued and maintained in the Middle Ages in part of Spain by a heretic named Elipandus, who was influenced by, believe it or not, Assyrian monks who showed up in Spain. And Elipandus taught something called that was called adoptionism at the time, but it's not classical Samosata adoptionism. It's really a neo-Nestorianism. And Elipandus taught that that you had the Son of God who was Son of God by nature, but then you had the Son of God who was adopted to be the Son of God, though he was originally the Son of Man. That heresy didn't survive for more than a few years. It was condemned numerous times in the 780s and 90s. And just kind of disappeared. And then with the Protestant Reformation, de facto Nestorianism began to rise because the Protestants began to refuse to call the Virgin Mother of God. Now, initially, this was something confined, I think, to the more radical Protestants initially. For example, the Lutherans did acknowledge the Virgin as Theotokos and Mater Dei, or Mater Theou, Mother of God, Birth Giver of God, in the Lutheran confessions. I'm not sure. The Anglicans and the Reformed were much more reticent about it, and there are a number of studies about how Reformed theology had a large aspects of Nestorianism built into it. As Rambles points out, a lot of Protestants essentially believe a Nestorian understanding of the incarnation because as soon as they say, "Oh, the Virgin, she's the mother of the body of Jesus, not the mother of." She's the mother of the. I mean, it's like saying my mother is the mother of my body. She's not the mother of Father Enoch. She's the mother of my flesh. All right, who actually goes around, to be honest, talking about that, speaking like that? Anyway, when you see Caitlyn, this one person's now, when you see Caitlyn Jenner for the first time, that's your name. Maybe you can figure out, just for our sake, if you can get a shorter tag.
I kind of like it. I like the shock look on the guy's face.
Yeah. Okay. All right. He says, Nestorianism is still visible in Reformed theory of atonement, known as penal substitution atonement, because that theory of atonement has God damned the Son. This either means you are Nestorian and only the human person God damned, or the divine person.
We shall call you trumpet.
Or the divine person was damned too, and you split the Trinity. I think that's the view that almost God hate God. I remember from some preachers, it was almost spoken about like God poured his hate and his wrath on his Son, and there was like this separation between the Son and the Father at the cross. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. That was when I was a Protestant. I would hear that was kind of how the atonement was described. That when Christ said on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Instead of it being interpreted like the Fathers, that was interpreted as him quoting Psalm 22, as well as expressing, St. Ambrose says, the kind of the angst of man. All right, it did not represent the separation between the Son and the Father. Yes, yeah, exactly. I've heard that. That's what I've heard. Yeah, so that sounds very Nestorian. Of course, there are juridical ways of explaining the atonement that are not Nestorian, but it seems they seem to want to pick versions of it that fit that Nestorian paradigm. Again, if you refuse to call the Virgin Mother of God and Birth Giver of God, you have to really question what their Christology is. You can claim all you want, you accept Chalcedon, but if you say you accept Chalcedon, but you don't accept Theotokos, you're Nestorian.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. Okay, Father, I think we've been going for 32 minutes. We're only going to do it for a short time. So unless there's anything else to discuss, we can close it down, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll close it down. I guess I can. Maybe I'll move over to the other show. I'm not sure. I'm probably not though, because I wasn't expecting to even do a show today. But we'll be back on Monday. So that's that's what we'll do. We have it's the weekend. We prepare for the Lord's Day.
Okay. All right, benedicite.
All right, benedicite. Hold on, please. Benedicite.